My husband planned a secret trip with our kids, but not me. I gave him one ultimatum, and what he did next shocked his whole family. My name is Rachel. I'm 33 years old, and I've been married to my husband, Daniel, who's 35 for 7 years. We have 2 kids, Lily, who's 6, and Caleb, who's 4. On the outside, our life looks pretty normal. Our marriage is mostly good. Daniel is a kind, attentive father, and when things are good between us, they're really good. But there's one shadow that's been looming over our relationship since the very beginning: his family. Daniel's family never fully accepted me. From the moment I met them, I felt it. They weren't rude exactly. They smiled, made small talk, asked polite questions, but beneath all there was a thin veil of coldness. I was never truly welcomed. Still, I tried. Over the years, I poured myself into building a connection with them. I'd bring homemade casseroles to family gatherings, memorize birthdays, and send carefully chosen gifts. I'd show up early to help set up for holidays, volunteer to clean after dinner, all of it. And yet it never seemed enough. The hardest part? Daniel's mother, Linda. She's the kind of woman who never says anything outright cruel. But she doesn't have to. Her words are needles disguised in sugar. She'll look me up and down and say things like, "Oh, that's an interesting outfit. Is that what moms wear now?" Her comment about Lily: "She looks a bit skinny. Do you even feed her?" Daniel's dad, Carl, is more reserved, but he never challenges her. He just nods along, quietly backing her behavior with silence. And then there's Daniel's sister, Megan. She's just 1 year younger than him, and honestly, she's always acted like she should have had the final say in who he married. She never hides her opinion that he could have done better, and she brings up his college ex way too often. Apparently, the whole family was convinced that girl was the one. Daniel sees some of it, but not enough. Whenever I try to talk to him about how they treat me, he brushes it off. "That's just how my mom is," he'll say. Or worse, "You're taking it too personally." I've learned to swallow the hurt, to smile, nod, and endure. I used to think I could win them over with time. But recently, something happened, something I can't just smile through. It happened on a quiet Thursday morning. I was going through our shared digital calendar, trying to plan a weekend trip for our little family. Something simple, like a couple days at the beach. That's when I saw it. An entire week in July marked off with the words "family lakehouse trip." My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard a single word about any lakehouse plans. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe something his sister had added to mess with dates, or something temporary that hadn't been confirmed yet. So, I asked Daniel about it. His whole body tensed. He wouldn't look me in the eye. After a long silence, he finally muttered, "Yeah, my parents rented a lake house for a family vacation." I asked him who family included, and that's when he admitted it. It was for him, Megan, their parents, and our 2 kids. Me? Not invited. I couldn't speak at first. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I asked him to explain. I needed to hear how he thought this was okay. And what he told me broke my heart. His parents had been planning this trip for months. It was supposed to be just blood relatives, according to them. They wanted to keep things simple. And Daniel, he went along with it. He had kept it from me, hidden it, and planned to take our children on a week-long trip without their mother. He said, "I didn't think it'd be a big deal." A big deal? The idea of my babies, my 6-year-old and 4-year-old, being whisked away to spend time with people who actively belittle and exclude me, that wasn't just a big deal. It was a betrayal. I told him right then and there. There is no way our children are going on that trip without me. Period. And just like that, the conversation exploded into a full-blown argument. He accused me of being selfish, controlling, said I was trying to keep the kids from their grandparents. He looked at me like I was the villain for not being reasonable. But I was done playing the role of the quiet, smiling outsider. Done pretending it didn't hurt. Because this wasn't about a vacation. It was about the truth, that his family had never accepted me as one of them. And worse, that my husband still didn't think I mattered enough to stand up to them. After our fight, I sat alone in the living room for hours. I kept thinking, how did it come to this? I wasn't just upset, I was shaken. My husband had planned to take our children away for an entire week, leaving me behind like I was some unwanted outsider. Like I wasn't part of this family at all. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. So I picked up the phone and called his mother. Linda answered on the second ring. Her voice was sharp, like she already knew why I was calling. I asked calmly, "Can you explain the lake house vacation?" She paused for a beat before answering. "I assume Daniel told you," she said, clearly irritated. "It's just a little family trip. Nothing complicated." Her words cut like glass, simple, cold, final. "I am family," I reminded her. "I'm Daniel's wife. I'm the mother of Lily and Caleb. Don't you think it's wrong to exclude me from something like this?" What she said next made my blood run cold. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "you're not blood. We thought it would be nice to have just the original family. Less drama. Less drama." I reminded her, again, that the children are my children too. That Lily and Caleb are far too young to be away from their mother for a week. But she brushed it off like I was being ridiculous. Oh please, she scoffed. Daniel's more than capable of taking care of his kids. Don't make this about you. Don't make this about me. That was it. I hung up and sat in stunned silence. I had spent years trying to be a part of this family, and in one phone call, Linda made it crystal clear I never would be. That night, I gave Daniel an ultimatum. I told him, calmly but firmly, that if he went on that trip without me, if he chose to leave me behind and take our kids to spend time with people who actively excluded me, he could come home to divorce papers. He looked at me like I had slapped him across the face, said I was overreacting, that I was blowing everything out of proportion. But for me, this wasn't just about a vacation. It was about every moment of disrespect I had endured for the past 7 years, and about the man I married, the man who kept asking me to be the bigger person while watching me get stepped on. This time, I wasn't going to be quiet. This time, I was choosing myself. The days that followed were heavy. The air in our home felt like it could crack from the pressure. Daniel barely spoke to me, just moved around like a ghost, angry, distant, confused. But I didn't back down. I couldn't. For the first time in our marriage, I stood my ground without flinching. Then one evening, without warning, Daniel walked into the room and told me he had made a decision. He was going to talk to his parents. He was going to tell them that if I wasn't welcome on the family trip, then none of us would be going. I stared at him, unsure if I should believe it, unsure if he really meant it, or if this was just damage control. He made the call while I was in the room. I heard Linda's voice on the other end, loud and furious, like a pot boiling over. How could you let her manipulate you like this? She shouted. She's tearing this family apart. Then came Megan's voice, too. She'd been watching from the sidelines, but now she had something to say. She started posting cryptic, passive-aggressive messages online. Things like, funny how some people just can't handle not being the center of attention. Or, it's sad when one person controls an entire family. But for the first time in 7 years, Daniel didn't cave. He didn't apologize to them. He didn't beg for their forgiveness. He told them clearly, if Rachel's not included, then we're not coming. And just like that, the trip was canceled. Linda was livid. She called me directly, her voice practically vibrating with anger. You've ruined everything, she hissed. You've destroyed our family. I didn't say much. I didn't have to, because for once, I wasn't the one tearing things apart. I was just refusing to let them tear me down anymore. In the quiet aftermath, Daniel and I had some of the most honest conversations we've ever had. He admitted that he'd spent his entire life being afraid to disappoint his parents, that he never really realized how much it hurt me, until now. I didn't want to lose them, he said softly one night. I looked him in the eyes and replied, and I didn't want to lose you, but I can't keep being married to a man who's afraid to stand beside me. He nodded, and for the first time, I think he finally understood. After the dust settled, I knew I had to do something for the kids, and for myself. They had been looking forward to a vacation, even if they didn't fully understand the drama happening around them. And deep down, I needed something to remind me of what our family could be, when we weren't drowning in judgment and manipulation. So, I proposed a trip to Disney World. I've been quietly saving for something special, tucking away money here and there whenever I could. It felt like the perfect moment, a chance to create real memories, happy ones, just the four of us. A week of laughter, magic, and peace. No cold glares, no snide comments, no walking on eggshells. To my surprise, Daniel agreed. We started planning, choosing the parks, looking at resorts, even arguing playfully over which rides the kids would love most. It felt like we were finding our rhythm again, maybe even healing. For a while, I let myself believe we had turned a corner. But then it happened again. A friend of mine casually mentioned something she saw on social media. A new event posted by Megan, a family lakehouse vacation. Same exact week as our Disney trip. And guess who was invited? Daniel. Alone. No me. No Lidi. No Caleb. Just him. Apparently, Linda and Carl had decided to try again, this time by offering Daniel a little break from all the drama. A week at the lake, just their son, without his difficult wife or the kids she was brainwashing. When I confronted Daniel about it, he didn't deny it. In fact, he said, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea. Some space might help. You could still take the kids to Disney. We just wouldn't go together. I stared at him stunned. After everything, the canceled trip, the screaming matches, the tears, the apologies, he was still willing to consider abandoning us so he could go make peace with people who never wanted me in the first place. I couldn't believe it. Do you hear yourself? I asked. Do you even realize what you're saying? He shook his head and muttered something about me being controlling again. That I was making this bigger than it needs to be. That I was trying to isolate him from his family. No, what I was doing was finally drawing a line. So I made a decision, one that tore my heart, but felt absolutely necessary. I told him, clearly and calmly, I'm taking our children to Disney World, with or without you. And then I called a divorce lawyer, because I was finally starting to realize something something painful, but true. If my husband couldn't prioritize his wife and children over his parents' manipulation, then maybe this marriage wasn't salvageable after all. After I called the divorce lawyer, something inside me shifted. It wasn't dramatic or angry, it was quiet. A calm I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't pleading, I wasn't trying to explain myself for the 100th time. I was just done. Done begging for respect. Done waiting for Daniel to stand up. Done shrinking myself to fit into a family that never wanted me in the first place. A few days later, Daniel and I had another blow-up. It started like the others, with him defending his parents and me trying to explain, again, that this wasn't just about a trip to a lake house. It was about respect, loyalty, marriage. But this time I came prepared. I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the comments people had left on a support forum I'd posted to. Not all of them. Some were harsh, too angry, too bitter. But I chose a few that were thoughtful, compassionate, and brutally honest. I wanted him to see that I wasn't the only one who thought this was wrong. I told him directly, I'm not bluffing, Daniel. I spoke to a lawyer. I know what my options are. I want this marriage to work, but I refuse to be disrespected like this. Not by your family, and not by you. And something about that finally landed. I saw it in his face, the shock, the fear, maybe even shame. He broke down. For the first time since this entire mess began, he really opened up. He told me he spent his whole life afraid of disappointing his parents, that his mother, Linda, had always controlled the emotional climate in their home. If he didn't meet her expectations, the affection would disappear. Silence, guilt, pressure. He carried that fear with him into adulthood and into our marriage. I listened. I really did. Because part of me has always known that Daniel was raised in dysfunction, that he learned to survive by keeping the peace. But I reminded him, you're not a scared little boy anymore. You're a grown man. You have your own family now, and you're losing us. I wasn't asking him to cut them off. I never was. I just wanted boundaries, respect, a real partnership. And finally, he agreed. That night, Daniel promised me he would go to counseling with me and on his own. He said he wanted to learn how to show up for our family the way he should have from the start. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just nodded, because I'd heard promises before, but this time he kept it. 3 days after that conversation, Daniel and I stepped into a therapist's office together. We didn't walk in smiling or holding hands. We weren't trying to pretend things were okay. We just sat side by side in the silence, exhausted but still showing up. That first session was hard, raw, honest in a way we hadn't been in a long time. The counselor helped Daniel see just how deeply his conflict avoidance had hurt me, how all those years of silence had become its own kind of betrayal. She gave us words for things we didn't even know we were feeling, gave Daniel tools to speak for himself, instead of letting his parents speak through him. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. Then came the moment of truth. The vacations were still scheduled for the same week. Our trip to Disney and the rescheduled lake house getaway his parents had planned just for him. Daniel had a choice to make, and this time, he chose us. He called his parents and told them he wouldn't be coming, that he was in a Disney World with his wife and with his kids, that if they couldn't respect me, they didn't respect him either. I expected backlash, and I got it. Linda cried. Carl accused him of choosing me over his real family. Megan sent him a barrage of texts, accusing me of manipulation and control. But this time, Daniel didn't hide it. He showed me everything, every text, every passive-aggressive jab. It hurt. Of course it did. But it was also validating. For the first time, he was letting me see the full picture. No more shielding. No more pretending. And then, Daniel did something I never thought I'd see from him. He wrote a letter, a real, heartfelt letter, to his parents and his sister. He told them plainly that their behavior toward me had crossed the line, that I was his wife, the mother of his children, and that if they couldn't treat me with respect, they were disrespecting him too. He told them he was choosing his family now, not the one he came from, but the one he built. They didn't take it well, of course. Extended relatives chimed in, trying to guilt-trip him. His mother even showed up unannounced at our front door, demanding to speak with him alone. And do you know what Daniel did? He told her, kindly but firmly, I don't have conversations about my marriage without my wife present. She left in tears, but I finally felt like I had a partner. And then we went to Disney. It was magical. There's no other word for it. Seeing Lily's face light up when she met her favorite princess, or hearing Caleb's giggles on his very first ride. Those were the moments I'd been holding on for. We laughed. We relaxed. We took 1,000 pictures. Daniel was present, engaged, even happy. Not once did he check his phone. Not once did he step away to call his mom. It was just us. A family. And for the first time in years, I actually felt like one. We came back from Disney sun-kissed, tired, and happy in a way I hadn't felt in years. There was peace in our house, actual peace. The kids couldn't stop talking about their favorite rides, and Daniel seemed lighter too, like some part of him had exhaled after years of holding his breath. I thought maybe we were finally in the clear. Then, a few days after we returned, I found a letter in our mailbox. It was handwritten, neat, deliberate. The envelope had both mine and Daniel's names on it, which was a first. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Linda. I expected manipulation, maybe even another guilt trip. But when I opened it, it surprised me. It was calmer than I thought it would be. Not quite an apology, not in any real sense, but an attempt at reconciliation. She wrote that their lake house vacation had given her time to reflect, that family was too important to let misunderstandings come between us. She even suggested a dinner at their house to start fresh. I didn't buy it, but Daniel was hopeful. He wanted to believe this was progress, that maybe, finally, his mother was trying. After everything, I understood why he needed that hope. So after talking it through with our counselor, we agreed to accept the dinner invitation, but with clear boundaries. We wouldn't tolerate passive aggression. We wouldn't pretend everything was fine. And if it went sideways, we would leave. Simple as that. The dinner was last weekend. Linda had gone out of her way to make it special. She cooked all of Daniel's childhood favorites, none of which the kids or I particularly enjoy, but I let that go. Carl was quiet but cordial. Megan didn't come. She texted a vague excuse about work, but I knew better. At first, things were okay. Not warm, but not icy. Linda asked about Disney, and the kids beamed as they told her all about the rides, the characters, the food. I could see her jaw tighten every time they laughed about something we had done without her. But she nodded politely. And then, as dinner was ending, Linda cleared her throat and smiled that rehearsed smile I've seen 1,000 times. I actually have a little proposal, she said, her voice sweet. She went on to explain that they had enjoyed the lake house so much, they'd booked it again for Christmas. And this time, she added with great emphasis, we want all of you there, including Rachel. She said it like it was some grand concession, a reward I had finally earned. And then she continued with the real catch. They wanted to start new family traditions. That meant no phones, no outside distractions, and most importantly, following Grandma's Christmas rules. She even pulled out a typed list, yes, a list of family traditions she expected us to follow. Christmas Eve bedtime stories, mandatory matching pajamas, no opening presents until Grandma gave the green light. Christmas Day meals in strict order, no electronics, no private time. Basically, it would be her holiday, her house, her rules, everything Daniel and I had been building with our own children, our own quiet, beautiful traditions would be shoved aside. Before I could even respond, Daniel stepped in. He calmly thanked his mom for the invitation, then added that we would need to talk about it privately. Once we got in the car, he didn't hesitate. He told me we'd spend Christmas morning in our own home, with our kids, our tree, our traditions. He said if his parents want to see us afterward, fine. But we wouldn't hand over the holiday just to make them happy. And we certainly wouldn't be following anyone's rules but our own. I wanted to cry, not from sadness, but relief. He was finally, truly standing with me. I was proud of Daniel for how he handled the dinner, proud in a way I hadn't been in years. He didn't explode. He didn't retreat. He simply said no to something that didn't feel right. Calm, clear, final. Our therapist had told him that setting boundaries didn't have to mean a war. Sometimes it's just walking away before someone gets to pull you into their drama. And that's exactly what he did. The next day, the storm came. Carl called first. His voice was tight, tried to sound civil. He told Daniel we had ruined Linda's effort to make peace. Said we humiliated her in her own home by questioning her Christmas plans. Then came Megan, of course. She texted Daniel a wall of insults, all centered on me. How I'd poisoned him against his family. How I was manipulating the kids. How I clearly didn't respect tradition. Same tired script, just angrier. But Daniel didn't take the bait. We took the messages to our next therapy session, where a counselor helped us see them for what they were, desperate power plays. Linda's letter, the dinner, the inclusive Christmas invite, it was all a performance. A soft reset, not a real apology. Even when they offered an olive branch, it came with strings, ones wrapped tightly around control. At our therapist's suggestion, Daniel sent a follow-up email. Polite, respectful, but firm. He thanked them for the dinner and the invitation. He said we were open to spending time together over the holidays, but we would be spending Christmas morning at our home. Our traditions mattered too, and we wouldn't be surrendering our parenting decisions to Grandma's rules. If they want to make space for us, great, but it had to be real space. Not a spotlight with a script attached. And then we waited. For 3 days there was silence. Then Linda called Daniel directly. I couldn't hear her side, but I watched his face, and this time it didn't fall. He nodded, said I understand, said I appreciate you saying that. But I could see in his eyes he was guarded, measured. When he hung up, he turned to me and said, she said she's disappointed, but she understands. I raised an eyebrow. Do you believe her? He paused, then shrugged. I believe she wants something. Not sure it's understanding. Still, we agreed to her revised idea. A few days at the lake house after Christmas. December 26th through the 29th. A short visit on our terms. And for once, I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel like I was being dragged into the lion's den. I felt like we were choosing this, together. Christmas Eve arrived quietly, like snow settling on a rooftop. For the first time in years, there was no tension, no guilt-ridden phone calls, no last-minute pressure from Daniel's family to just stop by. We turned off our phones, lit the fireplace, and let the kids stay up a little late, baking cookies and watching holiday movies. It was peaceful, warm, ours. Christmas morning, Lily and Caleb came running into our room before the sun was even up, squealing about Santa and presents. We had cinnamon rolls for breakfast and unwrapped gifts slowly, one by one. The kids were glowing, and Daniel, he was all in, present. Joyful. There was no cloud over his head for the first time in what felt like forever. He didn't check his phone once. Later that day, we sat around in pajamas, built Lego castles, and watched the kids play with their new toys. It was everything I had ever wanted our holidays to be. Simple, happy, safe. And I'll be honest, I almost didn't want to go to the lake house the next day, even though we'd agreed to it. Even though Daniel had set the boundaries. I worried it would undo everything we just built. But we went, because we said we would. And for the first 24 hours, things were surprisingly okay. Linda welcomed us with a bright, polite smile. Not warm, but civil. The house was beautifully decorated, and she had even included a few of my favorite holiday foods at the welcome dinner, which was a first. Carl made an effort, too. He helped the kids put on their snow boots and took them outside to explore the frozen lake. He even pointed out different birds and taught Caleb how to spot a cardinal. Megan didn't come, work emergency apparently, and honestly, that felt like a gift. That night, as Daniel and I lay in the guest room listening to the kids giggle in the next room, I turned to him and said, maybe they're trying. He gave me a small smile. Maybe. But by the second day, the cracks began to show. Linda started with small comments. Subtle things that most people wouldn't catch. Oh, the kids would have loved opening presents here, so much more space than your little home. Or, you're still doing that no screens rule? At their age, it's harmless. I tried not to react. I reminded myself this was what she did. Poke, smile, retreat. But by the third day, she couldn't help herself. That night, while I was helping her in the kitchen, she casually dropped her next bomb. We've been thinking, she said, sliding a casserole dish into the oven. For spring break, Carl and I might take the kids to Florida. Just the grandparents and grandkids. A little bonding time. I froze. No discussion. No asking. Just a plan. I replied calmly, they'll be in school that week. She waved it off. Please. They're so young. A week off won't matter. And you and Daniel could use the break. And then she looked at me with that tight little smile. Unless you don't trust us with them. There it was. The dagger in a velvet glove. If I said no, I'd be the overprotective, controlling mom. If I said yes, I'd be handing my children over to people who still didn't think I belonged in the family. So I didn't bite. I simply said, we'll talk about it. As a family. And with the school. Her smile dropped just a little. Later that night, I told Daniel everything. I waited for him to downplay it. Like he used to. But instead, he looked me in the eyes and said, that's not okay. She didn't even ask us. The next morning, he spoke to her alone. I don't know exactly what he said, but when we came downstairs, Linda's face was stone. Carl barely made eye contact. And the warm welcome from earlier? Gone. We packed up early and left a day ahead of schedule. On the drive home, Daniel turned to me and said, we need clearer boundaries next time. Maybe shorter visits. Maybe in public places where there's less power dynamics. I nodded. That sounds smart. Because here's the truth. Linda hadn't changed, but Daniel had. And that made all the difference. After the lake house visit, things were quiet. Too quiet. Linda wasn't calling anymore. Carl didn't send the usual follow-up texts about how nice it was to see the kids. And Megan? Still radio silence. No posts. No cryptic messages. Just absence. And honestly, it felt like breathing fresh air. For the first time since we got married, I wasn't waking up with a pit in my stomach every time the phone rang. I didn't have to brace myself for veiled insults or awkward family dinners. There was space, real space, to think, to breathe, to focus on us. Daniel and I sat down that weekend and had a long conversation, not about his family, but about ours. About who we were now. About where we wanted to go. We talked about the traditions we were building with Lily and Caleb, ones that belonged to us. About how much they had loved Christmas morning in our living room, opening presents in their pajamas with hot cocoa on the floor. How they didn't ask once about Grandma's rules or her lake house tree. That's when Daniel said something I'll never forget. I think I spent so long trying to make my parents proud, I forgot how proud I am of this, of our life, our kids, you. That moment hit me like a wave. Because for years, I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. Like no matter how much love I poured into our family, I was never quite enough to compete with his mother's expectations. But now, I didn't feel like I was fighting for a seat at the table anymore. I felt like Daniel had finally built one with me. We started talking about spring break plans. And this time, there was no pressure, no second guessing, no waiting for permission. We picked a spot, a quiet beach town a few hours away. Somewhere peaceful, sunny, calm. No extended family. No hidden agendas. Just us. Daniel was the one who suggested it. I want us to make memories on our own, he said. Without the drama. Without the manipulation. We both knew that his family hadn't really backed off. Not completely. They were waiting, watching, hoping we'd come crawling back to their version of what family was supposed to look like. But we were finally writing our own version. We even made a list, not of rules, but of boundaries. What we would accept, what we wouldn't, how we'd handle future visits. That we'd never again allow plans involving our kids to be made without both of us in the room. It felt empowering. I'd waited years for Daniel to set boundaries. And now, he was setting them before I even had to ask. In the weeks after that conversation, I noticed something strange, something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I wasn't angry anymore. Not all the time, at least. It was like the constant buzzing in my chest. The anxiety, the frustration, the sadness that always seemed to live right under my skin had finally started to quiet down. And that silence? That peace? It felt like power. Not the kind of power that demands control or gets loud when it feels unheard. No, it was a quiet, rooted kind of power. The kind that comes from knowing who you are, what you deserve, and being unwilling to compromise on it ever again. After years of losing myself, trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law, the peacekeeper, the smiling face at awkward dinners, I realized I had forgotten who I was outside of that role. So I made a decision. One just for me. I started therapy. Not couples counseling, not sessions focused on Daniel or his family. Just me on my own, sitting with someone who could help me unpack the years of resentment I'd shoved into corners. The heartbreak, the guilt, the way I'd twisted myself into someone small just to keep the peace. It was hard at first. I cried more in those first few sessions than I had in the last year combined. But somewhere along the way, I found her again, the woman I used to be. The woman who had opinions and boundaries and didn't apologize for taking up space. I realized that while I had been waiting for Daniel to stand up for me, I've been slowly learning how to stand up for myself. And the craziest part? Once I did that, once I started honoring my own voice, he started listening in a way he never had before. Maybe because I wasn't asking anymore. I was stating, this doesn't work for me. That's not okay. I won't accept that kind of treatment again. There was no room left for negotiation. Not about my worth. Not about my motherhood. Not about my place in this family. And Daniel? He didn't fight me on it. In fact, he started doing the same for himself. He finally started individual therapy too. And one night after the kids had gone to bed, he told me something that made my heart swell and ache at the same time. I thought if I didn't keep the peace with my parents, they'd stop loving me. But what I really did was push away the people who love me without conditions. I reached for his hand and held it tight. Because as broken as we had been, we were finally beginning to rebuild something honest. Spring break arrived like a long exhale after holding our breath all winter. No tension. No last-minute guilt trips. No text from Linda asking, have you reconsidered? Or Megan tagging Daniel in nostalgic family posts with subtle jabs. Just silence. And it was the most beautiful silence I'd ever heard. We packed up the car. Sunscreen, swimsuits, snacks, a stack of picture books for Caleb, and Lily's Minnie Mouse sunglasses that she insisted on wearing everywhere. Daniel handled the hotel reservations, booked the activities, even remembered to bring the kids' favorite beach toys. He was involved, truly involved. Not just tagging along, not waiting for me to lead. He was part of it. Equal, present, committed. We arrived at this quiet beach town. Warm sun, gentle waves, not too crowded. The kind of place where time slows down and no one's in a rush to prove anything. And something amazing happened. We didn't talk about his family. Not once. There were no whispered side conversations about how to respond to Linda's latest email. No walking on eggshells wondering if Megan would show up out of the blue. No wondering how our choices would be judged or twisted later. It was just us. The first morning, we walked along the shore collecting shells. Lily found one shaped like a heart and told me it was a mommy shell. Caleb just wanted to bury Daniel in the sand up to his neck, which he happily allowed. That afternoon, Daniel leaned over to me while the kids were building a sandcastle and said, this is what it's supposed to feel like, isn't it? I nodded. Exactly this. Because for the first time, we weren't just escaping drama. We weren't running. We were building something better in its place. Something sacred. Something soft. There were no rules but our own. We let the kids stay up late and fall asleep with salt in their hair. We ate ice cream before dinner. We danced on the balcony to silly songs. We let joy lead, not obligation. And I realized I didn't feel guilty about it. Not one bit. I wasn't wondering what Linda would say. I wasn't dreading the backlash. Because I had finally stopped seeing her voice as more important than my peace. We had stopped seeking their approval. And in that space, we found each other again. We made memories that were completely ours. When we got home, There was a package waiting, a box from Linda. Inside were Easter baskets for the kids. Thoughtful, yes. But tucked between the chocolate bunnies and coloring books was a note. Hope we can have our spring trip next year. Grandma still has big plans. Daniel looked at the note, then at me. He didn't sigh. He didn't hesitate. He walked it over to the trash and dropped it in gently without anger. And we moved on, because we weren't living under her plans anymore. We were finally living under our own. It's been 3 months since our beach trip, and some mornings I still wake up wondering when the rug will be pulled out from under me. It's a strange thing to feel peace after years of chaos. You start to doubt it, like maybe it's not real, or maybe you don't deserve it. But every time I look around at our home, the real laughter at dinner, the quiet bedtime routines, the absence of constant tension, I remind myself, this peace wasn't given to me. I fought for it. Daniel's still in therapy. So am I. We're still in couples counseling, and we probably will be for a while. There are still moments where old habits try to creep back in. He gets quiet when things get hard. I still get defensive when I sense even a hint of being dismissed. But the difference now? We don't hide from it anymore. We talk. We pause. We repair. There's no more pretending that everything is fine while resentment festers in the background. We don't sweep things under the rug. We don't minimize hurt just to keep the peace. We face it together. And that's what makes me believe we're going to make it. Daniel still hears from his family, here and there. Megan texted a birthday message for Caleb, short, distant, but civil. Carl sent a photo of an old family recipe for nostalgia's sake. Linda mailed the kids a summer reading list she clearly curated without our input. Old habits die hard, I guess. But Daniel's different now. He doesn't hide those messages anymore. He doesn't read them in the bathroom or step outside to take calls. He shares them with me, not to ask permission, but because we're a unit now. There's no him and them and me outside the circle. There's just us. He also doesn't respond right away, or at all, if he feels like the message is manipulative. That used to trigger him. Now it grounds him. He says if they really want to be part of our lives, they'll learn to respect all of us, not just the version of me they approve of. And I believe him. Our kids are thriving. Lily has started making up her own bedtime stories, and Caleb wants to be a chef like Daddy, which is hilarious because Daniel can barely cook pasta. But he plays along, and their laughter fills the house. And me? I'm still learning how to stop over-explaining myself, how to trust my instincts, how to let go of the guilt I carried for years, guilt that wasn't even mine to begin with. I no longer feel the need to win Linda over, or to earn a seat at their table. I have my own table now, one that I helped build, one where I'm not just allowed to sit, I belong. And if I could go back and tell the woman I was a year ago anything, it would be this. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for basic respect, love without conditions, a seat at the table you already helped create. And if they can't give you that, you build your own. If you told me a year ago that I'd be here, feeling hopeful, grounded, maybe even happy, I would have laughed. Not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't think it was possible. Back then, I was stuck in survival mode, smiling at people who resented me, explaining myself over and over to someone who didn't want to understand, trying to make a broken dynamic appear whole just so my children could have the illusion of a close-knit family. But the truth is, a family isn't about blood. It's not about last names or shared vacations or decades of tradition. Family is who shows up for you when it's hard. Family is who listens, who protects, who evolves when they've hurt you. Family is the people who say, I see you, and I won't let anyone treat you like you don't matter. And for a long time, Daniel didn't do that. But now he does. That doesn't erase the hurt. It doesn't undo the years of swallowing my voice or crying in secret after family dinners. But it does give me something I haven't had in a very long time. Hope. Not naive hope. Not the kind that wishes people will change overnight. But grounded, realistic hope. The kind that comes with boundaries, healing, therapy, and choosing peace over guilt. Daniel and I still have work to do. That kind of damage doesn't disappear in a single vacation or a few counseling sessions. But for the first time in our marriage, I feel like we're walking the same path, side by side, not pulling in opposite directions. He's still learning how to be a husband who protects as fiercely as he loves. And I'm still learning how to be a woman who doesn't apologize for taking up space. This summer, we're planning a cabin trip in the mountains, just us four. No drama, no tensión, just board games, campfires, and morning hikes with the kids. A new tradition, one that we're building from scratch, one that doesn't require anyone else's approval to be real. Linda and Carl haven't changed much. Megan hasn't called, and that's okay. I no longer believe that reconciliation should come at the cost of my dignity. I no longer confuse keeping the peace with keeping myself silent. And I no longer view being family enough as something I have to earn. Because I am enough. I always was. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe feeling like you've been sidelined, silenced, or made small in someone else's version of a family, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. You do not have to shrink to be loved. You do not have to tolerate disrespect just to keep the illusion of unity alive. You are not dramatic, or demanding, or selfish. You are asking for the bare minimum, to be seen, heard, and treated like you matter. And if they can't offer that, then it's okay to walk away. Because the family you build, the peace you fight for, the joy you claim for yourself, that's the real legacy. That's what your children will remember. Not who showed up for grandma's Christmas dinner, but who showed up for them, for you, for the life you're building on your own terms. And in the end, that's the only kind of family worth fighting for. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you next one.